Hello, charming class. Mrs. Bizier here, and today I'm going to talk about utilitarianism, John Stuart Mill, and then I'm going to cover 4 objections to the theory of utilitarianism. So, to begin, utilitarianism belongs to a family of theories called consequentialism. Consequentialism says that you need to choose your action based on the outcome of the action. So naturally that means the consequences. What matters when you do a moral action is not the act itself. It's not, is this a right or a wrong act? It's not your motivation. It's not your thought process beforehand. The only thing that matters is the outcome, the consequence. Utilitarianism is a part of this family in that it tells you what actions, what consequences are considered good. John Stuart Mill lays this right out the first page of your reading with his greatest happiness principle. A right action, for Mill, is one that promotes happiness. What's good? Happiness. He goes even further. What's happiness? Happiness, for Mill, is pleasure and the absence of pain. And Mill goes so far as to say the only desirable thing in the world is pleasure. Everything else is desirable either because it is pleasurable or because it leads to pleasure. Pleasure, happiness, the only good thing in the entire world. So whatever is good, a good action is what will give the most people the most pleasure. Good action, a right action, creates maximum happiness for a maximum number of people. That's what's good for Mill and for utilitarians. This means things that we normally consider bad, such as telling a lie, are acceptable. So think of it like telling a white lie. I'll invoke the classic moral philosophical dilemma of, does this make my butt look big? Okay, so your best friend, whom you love, comes up to you wearing an outfit and says, does this make my butt look big? Yeah, it makes your butt look terrible. But you know, if you tell your friend they look terrible, you will cause unhappiness. You will cause pain and the absence of pleasure. If you're a utilitarian, you don't want to cause unhappiness. You want to make people happy, want to bring happiness. You look great. Send them out the door. So certain things that we would consider wrong, like telling a lie, for a utilitarian, these things are not wrong. This also means that certain things we consider good, knowledge, beauty, friendship, these things are not good in themselves. There's no such thing as the goodness of knowledge. These things are only good insofar as they promote pleasure or happiness. So in some ways, utilitarianism is very simple. You have to maximize happiness. You have to do the thing that will bring the most happiness. You have an obligation to do the best action to promote the best outcome. This also means not only do you have an obligation to do the action which will bring about the most happiness, you're morally responsible for actions that you did not do. So you're on the hook for something. If you didn't do something that would have created happiness, didn't do it, you can be held accountable for that. Something like witnessing a fight. Say you're witnessing a fight between 2 people. One of them is kind of wimpy, clearly going to get beat up. That is not going to create happiness. If you could intervene, save that person, stop the fight, then you're morally responsible for it. If you chose not to and you walked away, you've done something wrong because you had an obligation to promote maximum happiness. In some ways, utilitarianism is very nice. It's very simple. What's good? Producing the maximum amount of happiness for the maximum number of people. That's good. In some ways, it feels intuitive. Butt looks big example. It feels like it's the right thing to say, honey, you look great. Send them off. Right? You don't, in a situation like that, the obligation to be honest is uncomfortable. You might want to change. And then they run off into the other room, sobbing, you've got a mess on your hands. That part of utilitarianism is very appealing. However, there are some problems with utilitarianism, and I'm going to discuss 4 of the main objections to the straight theory of utilitarianism and Mill's description of it. The first objection is the pig's objection from your reading. Mill spends most of your reading discussing this objection and countering it. The objection is, okay, So you say humans need to seek pleasure. It's good for humans to seek pleasure. So are we just going to sit around all day eating Cheetos and playing World of Warcraft because that feels good? In other words, are you going to reduce humans to the level of pigs? Not that pigs eat Cheetos and play World of Warcraft, but they seek base and simplistic pleasures. Are you telling me that's what humans need to do? Seek base and simplistic pleasures. Mill says, whoa, 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 whoa. He starts by saying, is that really what pleasure means to you? What pigs do? Mill goes on to say the pleasures of the intellect, like philosophy, for example, are much better than the pleasures of mere sensation. And you can tell by asking anyone who's experienced both. People who have experienced the thrill and the joy of taking a contemporary ethics class would never choose to eat Cheetos and play World of Warcraft. Instead, the pleasures of the intellect are so much greater. Mill goes on to say, no intelligent person would consent to be a fool. Once you've experienced intelligence, you'll never go back. But fools are happy, right? Doesn't everyone say fools are happy? And Mill says, okay, you're making a mistake there. You're confusing happiness with contentment. If your capacity for enjoyment is pretty low, it's easy to satisfy you. If you're a pig, all you need is mud, food, sunlight, you're happy. If you're an intelligent human being, you need food, sunlight, maybe mud, and a philosophy class. Your standard is higher. It's going to be harder to make you happy. But don't confuse low-level contentment of a fool or a pig with the high-level contentment of an intelligent human being. Mill also says that people can lose their capacity to enjoy higher pleasures. He says as people get older, sometimes they kind of seem to sink into this enjoyment of base pleasures and they lose the enthusiasm of their youth. Mill says that's because people lose the capacity to enjoy their higher pleasures. The ability to enjoy higher pleasures, he writes, is like a tender plant. It's killed if it's not nurtured. So if you don't keep studying philosophy, you might lose the capacity to enjoy it. Terrible thought. All right, that was the first objection which Mill addresses in your reading. The second objection is that utilitarianism seems to turn everything into a moral decision. Let's say I go to a movie. It was okay. It was an all right movie. I think I would have had more fun if I'd just gone fishing. I didn't maximize happiness. I went to a movie which produced a little happiness. I would have had more happiness if I'd gone fishing. My whole family would have been happier if I'd gone fishing. I've committed a moral wrong. With utilitarianism, you need to do the action which will create the maximum amount of happiness. I didn't do that. I've done something wrong. It seems a little bit weird to say a decision between a movie or fishing has a moral element to it. All right, objection number 3. Utilitarianism can lead to situations which just sound wrong. Utilitarianism can lead to things that we consider immoral. For an example, say you're a doctor. You're in a hospital. You've got 5 patients on the operating table. They're going to die unless they receive new organs, okay? Someone needs a heart, someone needs a kidney, someone needs a lung. All of them need new organs. They need them now. They're at risk of dying. Let's say that these are 5 important members of the community. They're leaders. They're successful. They're vital. Okay, so you're sitting there, 5 people on the operating table. You need organs. In walks the FedEx guy. You happen to know he's a universal donor. He's healthy. Organs are healthy. It seems like utilitarianism would suggest, off the FedEx guy, take his organs, give them to the 5 new people. Now, there are a lot of utilitarians out there. They don't advocate murder. They say something along the lines of, what kind of a society would that create? If you kill a FedEx guy and harvest his organs, you're going to create a society of mistrust. People will be afraid to go to the hospital. It's going to be an overall worse outcome for everyone. But what if you felt like you could get away with it? If you were pretty certain you could get away with it. Let's say you knew the FedEx guy, no family, No friends. Kind of a jerk. It seems like utilitarianism would suggest you have a moral obligation to do this. You will create more happiness if those 5 people are alive, functioning, happy, and healthy than if this one jerk goes. It seems a little bit wrong to have a moral system that encourages murder. So in some ways, it seems like utilitarianism runs counter to the demands of justice. We have an urge to say, I'm sorry, murder is just wrong. Justice demands that we don't murder people. For utilitarianism, that's not the case. The ends always justify the means. If you're a utilitarianist, the ends always justify the means. Maximum happiness is what matters. All right, which leads me to 4th and final objection. In some ways, utilitarianism seems to run counter to human nature. In some ways, it's great. You can tell your friend that her butt looks fabulous. Okay, that seems to agree with a sort of human need. In some ways, it's much harder. The FedEx man is an example of that. For utilitarian, let's say you were in a position to kill one person to save 100 people. And our discussion post for this week will talk about this. All right, utilitarianism, simple math. One person goes, that's a lot less happy. It's a lot less than 100. Saving 100 people will create more happiness than losing one person. What if it's 1 versus 3? Same math, all right? 3 people living is going to create more happiness than 1 person. You would sacrifice 1 to save 3. All right, but here's where it starts to run counter to human nature. What if that 1 person is your mom? Can we really say, yeah, I would sacrifice mom to save 3 strangers? All right, that's where we start to run into trouble. Think about the FedEx example from the 3rd objection. What if you're the FedEx man? Utilitarianism seems to place a huge demand on individuals to say you have to maximize happiness no matter what. You have to maximize happiness for everyone, even if it comes at great personal cost. If there are 5 people lying on the operating table who need organs, you have healthy organs and you can donate them. So long. All right, so that is an overview of the theory of utilitarianism, Mill, and some objections to it. I hope you enjoy the reading. As always, please email me if you have any questions.